Hey, discerning listeners, Love is Blind. Let's see what happens and see what comes out of my face as I watch. So, previously, when she had a difficult conversation with Izzy, she came back into the lounge and she did not exhibit sadness through crying or wanting support. What she did exhibit was anger and vindictiveness or bad-mouthing Stacy, right? So I was hoping, I don't want her to be sad, but I would rather her be sad than to be destructive. And as she comes into the lounge, I was hoping I would see tears, because I think that's what's at the basis of it. She deserves to cry. She deserves to feel sad about it. And if without that, then there has to be some way of coping with the suppression of that sadness. And it could be a variety of things. Now, maybe it's just shutting down until she can cry later or something, but let's keep an eye on that.
I'm feeling very confused, blindsided. Like, once again, I'm choosing someone who is emotionally unavailable, and I feel really dumb.
Yeah, interesting. Another part of this could be that her choosing Izzy is actually a part of her issues. And of course, when you're in your issues, they don't look like issues. They just look like you're being normal, right? And so whatever her issues are, maybe they were at play in her choosing Izzy over Chris. And now she's maybe seeing that. Because if she goes with Chris, then on the surface, it looks like she's settling, or she is using Chris to continue being on the show, right? But it's possible that she actually is like, well, thought I was actually going against my issues and my pattern, but it was just a different manifestation of that because I was going after someone that was inaccessible to me or something. I don't know. It's hard to know.
You're going home?
Yeah, he broke up with me.
Just now?
Yeah.
What did he say?
He didn't feel secure enough in our relationship. He was scared, and he made the safe choice.
That's one narrative, and maybe that is what he was saying. But even if he didn't say this, I would say that he just has more feelings, more attraction to Stacy than to Johnny. You know, we have these narratives that we tell ourselves, right? Like, oh, the safe choice and all these kinds of things. And sometimes it just comes down to the magic of romance. You just don't know why you're not attracted to someone, and you don't know why you are necessarily attracted to someone else. I mean, sometimes you kind of know why, but that's the way I would frame it. But it is a little worrisome that the way she's talking, you could argue what she said is critical and angry-ish towards Izzy, which is understandable. But what that tells me, I think, is if Johnny is legit in this situation, it's not just a game for her, which I think it is a legit thing for her, then she is doing something to suppress her pain and her sadness. And maybe that's functional. Sometimes we need that buffer zone and then we cry later. Sometimes it's weeks later, but we eventually need to, not necessarily to cry, but likely to cry, but we need to feel the sadness and the hurt and to get support around that. And once again, we're not seeing any evidence of it, which makes me worry about her state, makes me worry about her overall issues, right? What does this say about her issues? What does it say about her coping? What does it say about her past? What does it say about the way she thinks about herself? You know, it's possible that if she goes there to the sadness, for some people, I've had clients say this, they'll say, well, if I start crying, I'll never stop crying. And I've heard that so many times that what I tell clients is that's never happened in the history of humankind. There's no case of someone that began crying about something that was painful and they cried for the rest of their life. Plus, even in the weird sci-fi version where you do cry for the rest of your life, who cares? You could just carry around a card that says, I have a condition where I'm crying. I mean, that's silly. But anyway, the point is that notion, that belief that if I start crying, I'll just fall into this deep hole of despair and I'll never be able to crawl out of it. That is something that was told to you, or a way of being able to get through your day when you needed to. You know, when you were 10 years old and you had to get through your day, you had to go to school and you had to please your parents so you wouldn't get abused. You knew that it didn't do any good to cry about it. So you developed these ideas of like, look, if I start crying, bad things will happen, or I'll just never stop crying, or I won't be able to come out of it, and I'll get punished in the middle of it because my dad will say, shut up, that kind of thing. But now, so it didn't make sense then, but now you have power because you are no longer under that person's thumb and you are in therapy. And I'm here for you, and you have supportive people in your life. You can let it out now, and it's safe to do so. And if you don't let it out, it could be unsafe for you, actually. Your belief was absolutely necessary in the past, but it is actually working against you today. So is it something like that for her? I wouldn't be surprised.
And he made the safe choice. He felt like he knew more about her. And if she's what he wants, then his issues are going to be outside of here. Like they're just having fun in there.
You don't want to talk to Chris?
I mean, I will. But like, I just feel like I shit on our whole relationship this whole time.
I would hope that one of the friends would say, well, Johnny, yeah, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And, you know, none of us really know what's going on with Izzy and Stacy. And we just have to say we don't know. We don't know if they're going to work out. But at the very least, we absolutely do know that he dumped you and that I'm sad for you, you know, to try to emphasize that kind of thing. And maybe they did, but I think so people that exhibit this kind of behavior that's noticeable, and she's not over the top. She's not like Micah and Irina yet, anyway. But the pain is so great and the issues are so large that when I see this, it's a desperation. Right? It's oh my God, I see a panicked individual. It's one thing to see someone that's crying and is like, you know, oh my God, it hurts so bad. You might look at that person and say, oh, that person's really suffering. And it'd be tempting to look at Johnny and say, she's not suffering right now. But what I see is someone that's suffering 10 times more than someone that would be rolling on the couch crying. Because there's not only all of that rolling on the couch crying inside of her, but there's something else going on that is causing her the need to keep running and keep, you know, criticizing and avoiding.
But you liked him a lot, right?
When I came in here yesterday and I found out Chris was so torn up about our breakup, I was like, did I do the wrong thing? Yeah, because Izzy's unsure and Chris is crying about our breakup. Yeah. So I'm like, who really cares in this scenario?
Yeah. I will say that there is a flightiness to this for her. Who was I wondering? Oh, when Izzy was talking. Oh, yeah, when Izzy was talking with Johnny about her history. We still don't know. And maybe we'll never find out. What was Izzy reacting to? I did ask my wife about that. I said, when there was that scene at the end of episode 2, and Johnny and Izzy were talking, and Johnny was talking about having a number of partners who suffered from addiction, and one of them was a rebound or something, and Izzy was like very, very distraught, but not saying anything. What was going on? It seemed like Johnny didn't really know why Izzy was reacting that way, and I didn't know why Izzy was. I mean, there's a story there. I'd love to hear it, but I couldn't really intuit what it was. Stacy, my wife, pointed out that when Johnny was talking and describing her history, that it was confusing. The sequence of things that Johnny was saying wasn't making a lot of sense. It kind of had a twist and turn. It was edited. I rewatched it, and I also agreed with my wife that it did have some confusing segments to it. It wasn't quite sure what she was saying, but clearly Izzy heard something, you know, and we don't know if it was edited, so it's more confusing to us, who knows. But in that moment, the one thing I did wonder that Izzy was reacting to was that Johnny, he was concluding that Johnny was flighty, is the word I'd put to it, someone who frivolously commits without really understanding what she's doing or what she wants, just because she wants to establish a relationship. And I guess she's even had said as much as that she would settle for people who she wasn't really attached to, but they were safe. And of course, those relationships don't really work out, right? And so it's interesting. And her pursuing Izzy was her trying to break free of that. And yeah, but so maybe that was a good impulse of hers, that she wasn't just settling for the easy relationship that she wasn't really in love with. I mean, that's what she's been saying with Chris. And she was pursuing someone that it wasn't safe or easy. And maybe and did have a deep experience to it. And maybe she was right and healthy to do that, but because of luck, he just didn't like her back. We tend to look at these things as like fated or always related to personality. Sometimes it's just luck. What if Stacy just wasn't there? Or the first time that Izzy and Stacy met, it was awkward and they just, crossed them off the list. Would Izzy have been more responsive to Johnny? Could have. And could Johnny and Izzy have been, could they have been compatible enough to get married and stay married for a while after the show? It's possible. But we tend to talk about these things as though they're fated, like, well, Izzy and Johnny just aren't good for each other, but you just never know. I mean, as exemplified by the fact that if, for example, Izzy and Stacy end up working out in the future, they might not have ever met if it weren't for this show. So obviously it's not fated, right? It's just circumstantial. There's a lot of things that play into it. I know that's not the most romantic idea, but it is probably more objective than otherwise. So anyway, so she's saying that she went after Izzy and that was not the safe bet. And but like I said earlier, maybe it's a heuristic, a shortcut that she's using that is not wise, like a Costanza rule of just like, I'm just doing everything different, instead of maybe trying. There's a possibility that Johnny, even though she's had a lot of relationships with, romantic relationships, that she's never had a relationship that was truly intimate and truly disclosing and vulnerable with someone that actually is reciprocating the safety, and it's based on her history. She talked about her childhood as it was all good, but there's some signs that, although in some ways it might have been very good, but there's some signs that it wasn't all good emotionally and attachment-wise. Who knows? I don't want to accuse her parents of anything, but so it's possible that she's never had that kind of relationship romantically, or even any attachment that was really like that for her, and she avoided having to go there because of the fear of having it not work out. And then she goes there with Izzy, and then to have this being, see, you can imagine, this is all speculation, but you can imagine that having a lot of pain, so much pain that it would be very scary to feel the pain or recognize the pain, because there might even be a lot of associations, again, this is all speculation, but a lot of associations with that pain of, and therefore I am unlovable, period. I just am unlovable. And so you can imagine a defense of, I'm going to intellectualize this, I'm going to become convincing with my PowerPoint, and I'm going to try to get people to know that Stacy is a bad person. She might even have some template from the past of competition, like with a sister, or even competing with your mother for your father's attention. I don't know, but this could be reminiscent, or traumas when she was in high school where there was some kind of triangulation going on with one of her friends. I'm just grasping at straws, but often when we see this, and it's not extreme, and maybe it'll dissipate and she'll start crying. I just want her to cry. Not because I want her to cry, but I want her to be allowed to have her sadness, which is natural, and to be taken care of. Her friends are right there. They want to hug her. They want to be there for her. And she's just like, it's like she's at a board meeting strategizing about the competition and how she's going to crush them.
Mm-hmm. And I told Izzy, I felt more secure in Chris and I's relationship. So I'm like, did I just not choose it because it's secure and more boring?
Aaliyah is a very intuitive, smart person. And yeah, that's kind of along the lines of what I was saying I wish someone would do. It would just be like, hey, we're here. How you feeling? Yeah. And then does that. And then she starts crying. Let's get away from the anger. Let's get away from the strategizing. Let's just be here and now and recognize the sadness and the pain that you are feeling, right? You're feeling pain naturally, right?
Just wanted someone to love me for me. Oh, no.
And then she says that, and again, that's a normal thing that people will say when they're dating, even people that don't have relational traumas, significant relational traumas. But I wonder if there's something going on there, some schema, something she's running from.
If I can describe it, it's just like finding your first love, Like
Yeah.
that innocent, giddy, excited, just love. Where are you at with the L-bomb?
It's on my mind.
Yeah, it certainly looked that way. Even in previous pod meetings, it didn't look like Stacy was that into him, but I figured since he was committing and saying all these things, they must have had a lot more connection. And I'm sure they have, but I figured there must be that kind of talk. So on one hand, it's possible that Stacy is it just takes her a while. You know, sometimes it's a slow burn, or she's just not super expressive in that way.
What you told me is like pushing me in that direction to be able to say it to you. I know where I'm at, and I know I'll be able to communicate it to you when it's right.
When it's right, what does that mean? Like she's waiting for the right romantic moment, or when she actually feels in love with him? Which one is that?
I've dated, and I've like dated guys for a long time, and I'm like, like if I haven't said like I love you to them.
I feel bad for it. I'm not laughing at it. It's just I'm laughing out of nervousness. At least the way they're editing it and his facial expressions really tell a story of just like Arrested Development style. I've made a terrible mistake. I mean, the things she's saying, you just think, well, I mean, this is what he asked for, right? He wanted fun and wanted someone that is light and not deep. I mean, I don't think he would say not deep. And we don't know if I'm sure she's just as deep as everyone else, but in terms of the way she talks and the way she moves in the world, I don't know if a lot of people would call her deep, right? This is what you fell in love with. So maybe he's like, yeah, there's nothing strange here. I knew this about her, but I'm guessing, I don't know. I feel bad for him, especially after, yeah.
I keep doing that. I keep finding myself doing that, like humongous.
So this is yawning. We all understand that they are in these pods for hours and hours. So you can imagine that you're a cozy, remember when Tiffany fell asleep, right? That kind of thing. So I wouldn't pay attention to that as an indication of anything. There could have been plenty of times where Izzy was yawning too, and they just don't include that in the edit. But everything else she's saying in terms of the edit is interesting. All right, well, let's adjourn there. Tune in next time when I continue watching, and everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.